What's up, guys? Welcome back to Malt Mondays. This week, I'm taking a look at the Bruichladdich Classic Laddie. Now, this is their entry-level offering, and it retails about $50 to $60 in my area. And Bruichladdich doesn't peat their whiskeys, or at least they don't peat their standard whiskeys. And that's because back in the late 1800s when they were founded, I think it's 1880 or 1881, coal had just become readily available as an alternative fuel source. And so the distillery was founded at this time, and, to kind of be cutting edge with the times, I suppose they decided to use that rather than peat to dry their barley. So they didn't get this smoky peat flavor, which is unusual for an Iowa whiskey. Now, the Bruichladdich distillery today does create peated whiskeys, and they create some of the most heavily peated whiskeys in the world. They have their, not only the Bruichladdich, the Port Charlotte series is what that's called. And that's because there was another distillery just south of Bruichladdich, Port Charlotte, that did make peated whiskeys that went out of business a long time ago. So they've kind of revived that. And so they're the guys that make Octomore, but it's at the Bruichladdich distillery now. So they do create not only unpeated whiskeys, but the very most heavily peated whiskeys available. And the first thing you'll notice is this bottle color. Now, with the classic Laddie, it's the same color as the Laddie 10. But because Bruichladdich has become so popular recently, they've had shortages with their stock, just like many Scotch and Japanese whiskey suppliers, and even bourbon makers are having the same issue, that they don't have enough product to output the Laddie 10 with an age statement as much as they'd like to. So they came out with the classic Laddie, and this is Scottish barley. There's a classic Laddie with Islay barley as well, because Bruichladdich is actually exploring, as they do with many things, they've been exploring recently a lot of things with different cask finishings, pushing the limits of how far peatiness can go. They are exploring the terroir of whiskey and whether the barley, just from Scotland in general tastes different from barley elsewhere, and barley just grown on Islay specifically. And doing that also is a way to support their local farmers. So these are all reasons why Bruichladdich has become a little bit of the hipster single malt distillery. The same thing with Compass Box. Those guys are pushing the limits of what's allowed to be called Scotch in many ways. And they're constantly kind of snubbing their nose at the establishment. So Bruichladdich is right there with them. And the first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and pour a glass here. And you'll notice I don't have very much left. I do have more that I've siphoned off into a small sample bottle to keep it good. But you'll notice right away this color is pretty light. Now, Bruichladdich doesn't use any artificial coloring. So they're not coloring their whiskeys. And it's also bottled at 50% ABV. So Bruichladdich is actually trying to give people a lot more whiskey in the bottle for the price. They're not artificially coloring their whiskeys. I don't even think it's chill filtered. It may not... Yeah, non-chill filtered. So they're really pushing, just like Compass Box is pushing, trying to get it to the point where age statements don't mean everything, and they're allowed to post on their label 20% 12-year-old whiskey, 50% 18-year-old whiskey, etc., because they want people to realize, well, just because it says no age statement doesn't mean that it has to be bad whiskey. There could be really good whiskey in there. Bruichladdich is really kind of at the forefront of pushing the non-chill filtration, non-color, higher ABV to the market, and a lot of people love them for that. But the problem is, that's not what makes good whiskey. What makes good whiskey is how it tastes and how it smells. So, just because it's non-chill filtered, no coloring, doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be good. So, let's see how this smells. this, as far as single malts go, this is one of the best examples of a malty aroma. The Laddie, or the classic Laddie, I should say, they really use ex-bourbon, and they may use sherry casks, but third fill or something. I really don't think they really use any sherry casks at all. It's even less than 10%, which is what a Glenfiddich 12-year-old uses, if they do. Just based on the smell. This is really almost more, not even a full ex-bourbon maturation. This is like some reused ex-bourbon casks, or new American white oak that's not been too heavily charred. This actually really presents a malty body to it. It smells quite nice. So you get cream, a little bit of light fruitiness, like an apple, but there's like a custard, there's a barley note. It smells fantastic. And at 50% ABV, it's not even really hot on the nose at all. So we're going to see how this tastes. So that brings out a lot more of the like apple flavor on the palate. Tastes surprisingly more like your classic Speyside light bodied single malt there, but the extra ABV really gives it a punch and a kick, which if you're a bourbon drinker, you're going to appreciate a lot, because this is not a gentle scotch. This has some strength to it. And I'm getting more of an oaky note now. And like a little bit of a toasted oak. This is really for quite a floral nose too. I'm getting maybe a little bit of honey on there as well. So it's quite complex if you're willing to sit here and pick it out. And actually, if you add water to this, it will release a little bit more. But the reason that I don't is that I actually like the proof that it's at. I like the little bit of spice that it gives, the little bit of heat. It just makes it have a good body to it. Without that higher proof, I think this would get a little bit thin. So it kind of depends on whether you want the flavor to kind of be at its maximum or the nose, is generally my opinion with adding water to single malts. Because yes, it does release more aromas and more flavors, but it's very easy to add just a little bit too much water, and you end up with something that feels thin and just doesn't feel like whiskey. At least to me, it doesn't feel like whiskey. So if I was going to score this, this is a solid B. I think it's a little bit too expensive, and that may be where I am. Where I am, it costs sometimes $50, usually $60. So this is where I'm going to qualify my statement here a little bit. I think this is really good value for the money because it's a little bit different for an Islay whiskey. It's quite well made, quite well put together. You're supporting a smaller distillery. They're still quite a large operation, but relative to something like Macallan or Glenfiddich, they're a smaller scale distillery. And what they're trying to bring into the industry is positive change. No coloring, higher ABV, and no chill filtration. But especially the no coloring thing is really something that bothers me, because it's false advertisement. Now, what I want to qualify with this is I think there are whiskeys that are better than this that you can get for the same money. Things like your Balvenie Doublewood that have age statements. And now age statements aren't everything, but the fact that there is a Laddie 8-year-old pretty much means that this is no older than 8 years. So this is quite a young whiskey. They're charging a good bit for it relative to the age statement if you use that as a pricing barometer. And they're doing that, but they're giving you the higher ABV. So really, this is something that's going to matter. What matters more to you? How smooth and rich a Scotch is, because if that's what you're looking for, there are certainly better options. But if you're looking to support more of a positive change in the industry and you want higher ABV, if you were going to put this on ice, the ABV will hold up at least a little bit. If you want to support that kind of thing, the lack of the coloring, this is a no-brainer. Bruichladdich is a really, really great distillery. So if you're wanting to see what they're about, this is a great place to start. The other place I would suggest you start is the Port Charlotte, which I will be reviewing next week, and is their heavily peated option. So this gets a solid B to B+, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of the classic Laddie down below, and as always, subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.